Good morning. Welcome to English Online lesson. Today, we are going to learn the summary of the lesson The Victory. This video has been made as part of ISET Public School online class. The summarized portions are explained by the students of grade 8. Please watch it completely. Thank you.
Good morning. Today I am going to summarize the story, The Victory, which is about one of history's most successful commanders, which is Alexander the Great. So here we start. Alexander the Great had won many battles. His wish was to conquer the world. One day he and his generals came to India to conquer it. His first war was with King Puru of India. So he defeated King Puru and he made him his prisoner. It was his first victory in India, so he was really happy for that. So after the battle, when the generals were resting, Alexander the Great took his horse Bucephalus and moved on to the streets. He saw that the women and children were crying because of the defeat. He felt no pity on them, but felt really proud of his victory. When he moved on to the other sides, he saw some saints who were performing yagya, and they wore no upper clothes on their body, though it was winter night. So Alexander decided to give them woolen clothes and woolen blankets. So when he brought it, he saw that the saints were not noticing him. He tried many ways to notice them, but still they didn't even look at Alexander. So Alexander felt really ignored and said to one of those saints that, "Fakir, listen, I'm the famous Alexander the Great." So one of the saints kindly asked him if he could do anything for him. He just said that he needed nothing, and he conquered Hindustan, and he just decided to give warm clothes for these saints. So this saint said, "How can a robber can become the conqueror of the world? If you need to be the conqueror of the world, you should win the hearts of the countrymen. Then only you can be a conqueror." By hearing this, Alexander was really startled and he felt guilty. So he released King Puru and he left his plans of conquering India and the other parts of India. So the thing I want to say in this story is, conquering doesn't mean that it should be done in fighting and war. It can be doubled by peace and generosity. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. Today in this video I am going to discuss about the chapter The Victory. The Victory was written by an Indian author and critic named Manorama Jaffa. She wrote more than 65 children's books and several articles. Her books have powerful illustrations and strong messages for the readers. Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great had won many battles. His desire was to conquer the world. India was known as Golden Bird at that time in the world. Alexander and his generals turned toward India to conquer. They passed mighty Himalayas in that cold weather. Then they entered the country and reached the river Sindhu. Then there was a battle between Alexander's army and the army of King Puru of India. Alexander's army defeated King Puru and made him captive. Here captive means made him a prisoner. Alexander was very happy in his first victory in India. After the day's battle, Alexander and his army was resting in tent. Alexander and his host quietly slipped out of the tent to see more Indian countryside. They moved through the streets of India. The houses in the streets of India were dark without lights. The women and children were wailing. Here, wailing means crying loudly. Alexander felt no pity. instead at a distance. He moved closer to the campfire. Then he found some saints doing yagya at the bank of river Sindhu. Then here yagya means a religious ritual. Then he stood quietly behind the big trunk of a tree and watched the saints. Then it was winter, and the wind was blowing, and it was extremely cold. And the saints wore clothing. They didn't wear any clothes at their upper bodies. Then Alexander felt himself sorry for them. Then he stood quietly behind the big trunk of a tree and watched the saints. Then it was winter, and the wind was blowing, and it was extremely cold. And the saints wore clothing. They didn't wear any clothes at their upper bodies. Then Alexander felt himself sorry for them, sorry for the naked fakirs. Then it was already night, and he went back to the camp, and he woke up his general and said that urgently I need some thick woolen blankets and woolen clothes. Heaps of thick blankets and thick woolen blankets and woolen clothes were brought. Heaps means a large amount or a group. Then Alexander took his generals to the jungle. Then the caravan stopped where the saints were performing yagya. Alexander noticed that the saints were still busy in chanting hymns. Then he moved closer to the saints to get their attention, but no one paid any attention. Then Alexander patted his horse and coughed. Then still no one paid any attention. Then Alexander totally got irritated, and then he approached one of the saints and called him, "Hey fakir, I am the famous Alexander the Great." The saint looked up and asked him very sweetly, "Hey young man, who are you? What do you want? What can I do for you?" Alexander was taken aback with the question. He paused. "Well, I don't need anything from you. I am the great Alexander, and I have conquered your Hindustan. And I saw you people naked at this cold winter weather. So I have bought some woolen clothes and blankets for you all." The saint threw a sharp glance at Alexander. Here glance means a sudden look. Then saint commanded, "Who are you? What do you want? What can I do for you?" Alexander was taken aback with the question. He paused. "Well, I don't need anything from you. I am the great Alexander, and I have conquered your Hindustan. And I saw you people naked at this cold winter weather. So I have bought some woolen clothes and blankets for you all." The saint threw a sharp glance at Alexander. Here glance means a sudden look. Then saint come closer to Alexander and put his hands on Alexander's shoulder and asked him, "So you are the famous Alexander who conquered the country by robbing them?" The saint gave a loud laugh and asked, "Tell me, my child, how can a robber be a conqueror and a giver?" By saying this, saint looked deeply into Alexander's eye. Alexander turned pale, not knowing what to say. He still stood like a statue. The saint said, "We are renounced, and we said that we don't need anything. So what we have right now, we are ready to give back to. So please say what you need." Alexander couldn't believe his ear. He didn't see or hear things like this. He saluted the saint. He didn't see or hear things like this. He saluted the saint, and without saying anything, he went back to his camp. And the caravan followed the master. It was dawn, and Alexander could hear the chattering of birds. He made a decision that he had stopped his forward march. He released the King Puru of India from the prison. Then he put off the future plans to conquer the another parts of India. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. I'm Neha Naseem from grade 8. I'm studying in ICET Public School. Today I'm going to summarize the chapter The Victory. This chapter is about the decision that Alexander the Great has made. So let's get into the chapter. Alexander the Great desired to conquer the world. He ordered his army to proceed to the Golden Bird. At that time, India was known as the Golden Bird. Under Alexander's command, the army turned towards India. They crossed the Himalayas and reached the river Sindhu. There, they defeated King Puru and held him captive. It was his first victory in India, so Alexander was very happy. After the day of the battle, Alexander mounted on his horse and set out to see the countryside of India. While walking through streets, he saw women wailing and children crying. He felt no pity. Instead, he was proud of his victory. Then he turned towards the forest. He saw a bonfire at a distance. He went closer and saw Indian saints performing yagya on the banks of Sindhu. He stood behind a tree and watched them closely. It was winter time, and the saints wore no clothing on the upper side of their body. Alexander pitied them and decided to do something for them. He returned to his tent and ordered his chief general to bring him woolen blankets and woolen clothes. Soon, a heap of woolen blankets and woolen clothes were put on a caravan. Alexander himself led the caravan towards the jungle. The caravan stopped where the saints doing their rituals. Alexander tried to get their attention, but they ignored him. He felt irritated and approached towards the saint and said, "Listen, Fakir, I am Alexander the Great." The saints looked up and asked, "Hello, young man, what can I do for you?" Alexander was taken back. He stood there for a while and announced proudly, "Well, I don't need anything from you. I am Alexander the Great. I have conquered the Hindustan. I saw you naked in such a cold weather, so I bought woolen clothes and blankets for you." The saint put his hand on Alexander's shoulder and said, "Young man, so you must be the Alexander who conquers countries by robbing them. Tell me, young man, how can a robber be a conqueror or a giver?" Alexander turned pale. He don't know what to say. He stood there like a statue. The saint continued, "Well, if you really want to conquer the world, first win the hearts of the countrymen with love. As for us, we don't need anything. If we have anything left, we can give it to you." Alexander never heard such things like this before. The feeling of guilt made him sad. He saluted the saint and returned to his tent. It was dawn. Alexander can hear the chirping of the birds. He had made a decision. He released King Puru and put off his future plans to conquer the other parts of India. Well, that's all in this chapter. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nida Fatima. So today I am going to say about the chapter named The Victory. So this chapter was written by the Manorama Jaffa. So this chapter was talking about the great Alexander. So let's start the chapter. Alexander the Great, who had won many battles, and his desire was to conquer the India. So he ordered his brave generals to proceed the Golden Bird. So India was known as the Golden Bird of the world at that time. So they were get ready to go to the India. So they reached India. So the first battle was between Alexander's army and the King Puru's army of India. King Puru was defeated, and the first victory in Alexander's first victory in India. He was very happy. After the day's battle, Alexander's armies was resting. He want to saw them countryside, so he take his horse and go to the streets. When he was going, he saw a place where there is no lights and the women are wailing and the children were crying. He didn't take it as a serious matter. He take it as a thing, anything. He felt no pity and instead of it, he proud of his victory. Soon he turned his horse to the other side. It was turned to a jungle, and when they were going, they saw some pupils, and they were saints, and they were performing the yagya. And that was a winter time, and they put them clothes. The saints not wear any clothes to their upper bodies, so Alexander think those so poor, and he felt so poor to them, and he think he want to give something to them. So he returned to his tent and said his generals to bring some woolen clothes and woolen blankets, and they give him that woolen clothes and blankets. They go to the jungle where the saints were there, and the Alexander and their caravan stopped when the saints were performing the yagya, and then Alexander called them. When the Alexander came, they didn't mind the Alexander and the caravan came, so the Alexander just coughed for seeing them for a look, but they didn't mind it. Alexander patted his horse, and that also not worked. They won't see it. They didn't look. And Alexander got irritated, and he dismounted and proceeded to the oldest saint. The saint did not notice, and Alexander got ignored. And then he approached one of the saints and listen, the great Alexander. Saints looked up and asked Alexander, what you want, the young man? What can I do for you? At that time Alexander said, I don't want anything. I want to give some clothes to you. So that's why I came. The saint threw a glance at Alexander. He came closer and put his hands on the Alexander's shoulder. He said, young man, you are the famous Alexander conquers countries by robbing them. The saints laughed and said, how can a robber be a conqueror? Alexander turned to the pale. He stand like a statue. Saint continued, if you want to be a conqueror, you want to the hearts of the countrymen and with the love. Alexander could not believe his ears, and he didn't hear the things like this. The feelings of them made him sad. Then he made a decision to stop his forward march, and he releases the King Puru, put off his future plans to conquer the other parts of the India. And this was the end of the story. Thank you.
Hi. Today I am going to tell you the summary of the story, The Victory. First, Alexander has won many battles, and his desire is to conquer the world. Go towards the golden bird, says Alexander to his army. The golden bird is India. India was known as golden bird at that time. Alexander and his army went towards India, and they reached India's river Sindhu's bank. Then their army fighted with the King Puru's army and defeated his army, King Puru's army, and Alexander and their army was taking a rest. Then he decided to go and see the country. So Alexander mounted on his horse and went to the countryside. And when he went to the countryside, he saw many women there crying and children there which are running around and crying. But he didn't feel pity. He felt proud of it. And also he then turned his horse around and went to the jungle, where he see a bonfire. He goes towards the bonfire and he sees many saints performing a ritual called yagya. And the saints were top naked. So he decided he saw this. The weather was very cold and he felt very bad for them. And he went back to his camp and said his captain and army to take many woolen blankets and clothes to give them. So he brought many woolen blankets, and he said to them he wanted to get their attention. So he patted on his horse and cuffed, but there anyone didn't give any attention. So then he called the oldest saint, but he didn't give him any attention. So he felt ignored. But then he called another saint. Then the saint says that what you need. Then Alexander says, I am the famous Alexander the Great, and I didn't came to buy anything, but I want to give you something. And he actually showed him what he bring. Then they said that how can a robber, a person who robs countries became a conqueror, and how can he give? And the saint laughed. This made Alexander very guilty, and he went back to the camp, and he made one decision. The next day he set King Puru free, and he decided to go to other parts of India and conquer them.
Thank you for watching the video. Now we shall write the question and answers in notebook. I have posted the notes in the group. Please see it and do the work. Okay, bye.